we are overwhelmed with the amount of people who've showed up, and it's completely kind of overrun our expectations, as you can see. But thank you so much for being here. It's really inspiring to be in the presence of this beautiful building and campus that has just completed 100 years and also won a UNESCO award for its conservation efforts. Some of you might know me as Pinkish and others as the so-called editor of this book. A small disclaimer before we proceed though. Somewhere along the way, Sen anointed me as the editor of this book, but I must confess at the very start that I'm not really trained to do this. I see my role more like a sutradhar, which is normally understood to be the thread that binds. My focus has been on keeping people connected along the way and ensuring how things connect in the book. Sutradhar comes from sutar, thread, and suthar, the makers of the universe and all things in it, who according to legend are the carpenters descended from the son of Vishwakarma. This act of making from conception to completion to discover beauty and joy in the process is one I see as being very valuable and enriching. We are here today for the release of the book Sen Kapadia, Architect in Pursuance of Meanings. I'd like to share with you all a brief background of its origins and process. The idea for the book, though simmering for a very long time, took shape during the pandemic. Starting in late March of 2020, when egged on by his wife, Dr. Asha Kapadia, Sen decided to start penning down his thoughts and reflections, utilizing the time alone at home. Through sharing his journey of 50 plus years of practice, reflecting on his philosophy, values, and life lessons learned, he wishes to share with everyone what the role of an architect could be in society and its future development. The book is not a monograph. What it is a first-person account of the process of inquiry into re-looking at his archives to extract deep meaning by revisiting more than 100 projects, structuring the book, creating reflective content, designing a visual structure, evolving a conceptual layout, prototyping, etc. What all these lead up to is a book that is simply Sen Unplugged, an unadulterated look at his thoughts, his ideas, his designs, and his choices. The book is structured in 4 parts: 3 essays, 5 cities, 1 conversation, and 8 projects. 3 new essays by Sen form the core of the book. It is as raw and unfiltered as you will get Sen. To quote him from the book, I present here the exertions of my half a century long journey in the realm of architecture. I could have disguised myself as a heroic achiever by sketching an impressive self-portrait, but in reality, we are just a sum total of the right and wrong turns on a long journey seeking wisdom on an uncharted path. Like some of us, Sen's life and outlook have been influenced by various different art forms, films, music, literature, etc. But at his most personal here, he reminisces about 5 key cities that have had a deep impact on his outlook and are an insight into his formation as an architect, and more importantly, as a sensitive human being. Personally, my favorite part of the book is this conversation between 3 thinkers, B.V. Doshi, Atul Dodiya, and Sen Kapadia. It was conducted after a joint visit to NID PG campus in Gandhinagar, and while it starts out by discussing the project, it quickly digresses into discussing all kinds of doubts and anxieties that all creative individuals struggle with, amongst many other things. I would urge you to simply deep dive into this fascinating discussion, made even more wonderful by the thoughtful graphic design by the book's designer, Studio Anugraha. Lastly, 8 selected projects by him are discussed here. Among the numerous projects which Sen focused on throughout his practice, consisting of a wonderful plethora of drawings, models, photographs, and more, it shows some of his exemplary experiments in representation from across time, from his seminal hand-drawn axonometrics, his Indian miniature-style collages, to computer models and renders. On a personal note, I have really struggled to understand his choice of these 8 projects from his extensive oeuvre. They are not the most prestigious or popular. They are not the only ones that were built, nor are they the ones with the most extreme experimentation. So why did Sen pick them? As I have mulled over them for this past year, I have begun to understand them as the most incomplete, for the lack of a better word. Incomplete, not as we would understand them to be unresolved, but as being unfinished inquiries and open ended questions. Open ended enough for future generations to explore further and take ahead, keeping the conversation ongoing between the past, present, and the future. The projects and the book are thus an open letter to the future. It reminds me of what the famous Italian designer Achille Castiglione once said: a good project is not born from the ambition to leave a mark, but from the desire to establish an exchange, even a small one. We hope this book starts that, an exchange of Sen Kapadia's ideas and thoughts, and is the beginning of many more to come in the future. On that note, I welcome you all for today's event. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Kartikeya Shodhan from CEPT University Ahmedabad, who has been heading CEPT Archives since 2020, where Sen Kapadia's archive is also vested. He has an independent practice that has won several awards. Amongst them is an award for which he partnered with Japanese architect Shigeru Ban on the execution of 20 paper tube houses for a relief project for earthquake affected persons in Kutch. He has lectured and taught in various universities across India and the world. Mr. Shodhan currently curated an exhibition 1:1 Stories, Practice and Collaboration, and co-authored a monograph on architect Kamal Mangaldas and structural engineer Devendra Shah, with whom he had earlier worked for 2 years and thereafter headed a joint architectural practice with them for 10 years. I invite Mr. Shodhan on stage to say a few words and then please release the book.
Thank you, Pinkish. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to say a few words on this very special occasion. We at CEPT Archives and CEPT Press, CEPT University Ahmedabad, feel honored to be entrusted with publishing architect Sen Kapadia's book, In Pursuance of Meanings, as well as archiving his architectural legacy spanning over 4 decades. We are grateful to Sen Sir and Ashaben for their long-standing and continued association with CEPT University. I'm hoping that most of you have heard of CEPT University in Ahmedabad, but just in case, for the benefit of those of you who have not, I'll give a brief introduction. CEPT stands for Center for Environmental Planning and Technology, and as the name suggests, focuses on preparing professionals in understanding, designing, planning, constructing, and managing human habitats. It has been recognized as the Center of Excellence by the Government of Gujarat and is one of the top ranked institutions for architectural education in the country. CEPT University Press promotes indigenous writing and research, and it publishes works that are meaningful and relevant to academia, profession, that helps develop a wider understanding and appreciation for architecture, design, and urban issues. CEPT Archives, an initiative by CEPT University, is one of India's first archives for architecture and allied disciplines. At CEPT Archives, we acquire, organize, and preserve history of practice and pedagogy. It is open to students, scholars, professionals, and anyone across the globe who is interested in the subject for reference and research. All the events, initiatives, and activities at CEPT Archives are aimed at informing, inspiring, and connecting focused and varied audiences. We love it when we get to work with someone like Sen Sir. His enthusiasm is contagious. We could sense his eagerness to share the work with a larger audience. And so even during the peak lockdown period of the pandemic, when all flights and trains were suspended, we decided to make a special road trip to Mumbai and collect the material that he was so keen on gifting to CEPT Archives. We like it when someone is as enthusiastic as we are in contributing towards expanding the rich collections at the archives. Since this brings alive my memories of kite flying, we are aware that you are a proclaimed expert kite flyer. And I have flown kites on Uttarayan days from the terrace of the first house you designed in Ahmedabad, the banker's residence, inspired from your stay at Golconda home in Pondicherry. Sir, I would like to thank you once again and Asha Ben for always being there to facilitate the smooth flow of the processes. And as a token of our love and appreciation, I would request you to kindly accept this little gift that contains some of the work we have done at CEPT Archives.
Can I request Mr. Shodhan to release a copy of the book, please?
Yes.
Please come ahead.
Congratulations, sir, and our best wishes for your good health. Thank you for giving us so much to cherish and to learn from. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Shodhan, for gracing us with your presence and the special effort to be here all the way from Ahmedabad today for this launch. As we move on to the next part of the evening, I would like to do a quick short round of introductions of our panelists. First and foremost, Mr. Prabodh Parikh. Mr. Prabodh Parikh is a Gujarati poet, short fiction writer, visual artist, and former head of the Department of Philosophy at Mitibai College. He speaks with passion on the work of writers ranging from John Cage to Labh Shankar Thakkar, a Gujarati poet on whom he recently completed a documentary film on being human, produced by Sahitya Academy, New Delhi. He holds a bachelor's degree in philosophy from the University of Mumbai and a master's from Oklahoma State University, USA. He has delivered numerous lectures and participated in various national and international seminars on these subjects. Mr. Atul Dodiya. Mr. Dodiya completed his Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from Sir J.J. College of Architecture, Art in Mumbai. He furthered his academic training at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris from 1991 to 92 and subsequent to a scholarship awarded by the French government. Mr. Dodiya has displayed his work in the form of national and international exhibitions in Hong Kong, Singapore, Tokyo, Berlin, New York, Madrid, Mumbai, New Delhi, Kolkata, Vadodara, Bangalore, and many, many more. He is considered today to be one of India's foremost visual artists. Dr. Mitra Mukherjee-Parikh is an associate professor and head of Department of English, SNDT University. Her interests encompass literary theory and criticism, women's writing and feminist theory, drama, transnational studies and comparative literature, modern poetry, cinema, and many more. Dr. Kaiwan Mehta. Dr. Mehta is a theorist and critic in the fields of visual culture, architecture, and city studies. He has completed his doctorate at the Center of the Study for Culture and Society in Bangalore. He has authored Alice in Bhuleshwar, Navigating a Mumbai Neighborhood in 2009 and The Architecture of I. M. Kadri in 2016. Since 2012, he has been the managing editor of Domus India magazine and has taught across various undergraduate and postgraduate programs in Mumbai. Mehta has co-curated with Rahul Mehrotra and Ranjit Hoskote numerous exhibitions such as the State of Architecture, the State of Housing, and working in Mumbai, Rahul Mehrotra Architects, to name a few. He is currently the Dean of Balwant Sheth School of Architecture, NM Deemed University. Over to you, Prabodh Bhai, to take this ahead. Thank you.
Are we on? Yes. Yes, I think we must begin by quote unquote undressing ourselves. It's so bloody warm, but I think we'll learn to stay with it. Let me start with a story. The other day, and this is actually a true story. The other day at the wedding reception, just 4 days before, I met builders, architects, brothers from Delhi. Middle-aged, doing well because they know how to negotiate the municipality in Delhi. And we began to talk about what is it to be an architect. And Sen Kapadia, we had to show off that we know someone who is an architect. So we mentioned Sen Kapadia is a very close friend. And then what happens? They say, look, we do business, we are professionals, we build buildings whenever we can get to do it. Sen Kapadia is another story. He is an institution. And I said, God, I mean, of course, then we got a lot of attention from those two builders. I could not help asking myself, what is it to be described as an institution? Because I thought we only know an individual called Sen Kapadia. And I think it is best that we talk about the individual, but that's a little later. Sen doesn't, he claims he doesn't like being talked about, but of course he's delighted that he's being talked about. Okay, now.
Let's keep it controversial.
Okay. Many of you have known Sen one way or another, as friend, as client, as students, as admirers, as colleagues. Some of you have here or there read a paper or two on him or by him, and are somewhat familiar with the work he has done in this part of the world or some other places like Ahmedabad. He's an integral part of the landscape, not only of this city, but as much as of New York, Ahmedabad, Paris, and Kalbadevi. But above all, it happens to be a class of his own. But this evening, we are not talking about Sen Kapadia. We are not talking about the dancer. We are talking about the dance. And how do we know the dancer from the dance? Of course, we can all claim that we know him, but it's only when we begin to negotiate our lives, our attitudes, our passions, our concerns, that Sen, unquote, reveals himself. As a friend, he reveals a little differently. I used to say, I have known him from 1964 when I was barely 17 and he was at NID. And he has built us a home, he has built us a second home, and he has built me a third home, the library. He has designed our building, he designed our home, and all of them have red tiles. You have to learn to live with it. Okay, having said that, what is it to know the dancer from the dance? That's what we're going to play around with. And luckily, we do have with us Atul Dodiya, who has been his client, so to say, a very dear friend. We have Mitra, who struggled to be with Sen for last 1.5 years. So every word and every sentence and every paragraph had to be kind of again and again churned into a perfect sentence. And Sen would say, now it's okay. The next day would phone Mitra and say, it's not okay, I'm not happy with it. And he's still not very happy with it, nor is Mitra very happy with it. But here we are with a book. And then we have Kaiwan. Now, Kaiwan also happens to be the Guru Dakshina he was supposed to give some 5 years back by writing a major book on Sen. It didn't materialize. He disappeared, became a dean of the institution. And when you phone him, he doesn't pick it up. But that's Kaiwan. He's still writing that book on Sen. He's the dean, and he was a student of Sen Kapadia. And we have been good friends because he writes Alice in Bhuleshwar, and I write blues, Bhuleshwar blues. So we join hands together. So we're going to have a conversation in a very relaxed way. But of course, somewhat demanding in the sense that if you know, the book has barely 4 texts, not more than 10 to 12 pages of writing. And can 10, 12 pages of writing, when you do it when you are 85 and you have some constraints of the body and the mind and the physical movement, is a miracle, because those 12 pages contain what a philosopher would envy that he couldn't do it, like critique of practical reason and things like that. So here we have an extremely engaging and demanding text, the written text. I'm glad I don't know the language of architecture, so I'm not going to talk about those 8 projects and ask Kaiwan to respond and Atul to respond and so on and on. So we're going to start with a conversation. Okay, give me a minute. Atul, Sen has been engaged with visual arts from 1960s. He mentions experiencing Akbar Padamsee's black and white abstract canvas when he sees those paintings as a college student. And he gets thrilled by the possibility of colorless painting, as if seeing Akbar Padamsee's work as an exercise in Gandhian restraint for only the essential. He sees Akbar Padamsee, and after 50 years he reflects on it and says that I sense that there is something about the Gandhian sense of restraint, retaining only the essentials. And that's where Sen, I think, comes from. Is minimalism has to do something with Gandhi, like Atul has to do so much with Gandhi. So we're going to take off from that, number one. I'll continue for a little while and then hand over. So he says, Atul says, Sen says he's arriving now at the aesthetics in absence of color. Sen claims that some of his aesthetics are a kind of arrival at one which has no colors. And that's worth reflecting on. Second point. We can think of Rothko and we can think of Gaitonde and Nasreen, and all that does fit in, but there is something else going on here when Sen talks about black and white, and Atul will question him, and there will be a very rewarding experience. So, how do you respond to the colorless paintings?
Well, can you hear me? First of all, I must say that I have an allergy of the word client.
Oh, I know, I take it back.
I understand, the importance of the client.
Louder.
Can't hear you.
So, I feel that the cinema and architecture, these are the two medium which are really expensive medium or to deal with, to begin with. Well, before we go to the kind of things which you suggested, I would like to say a few things about Sen, that Sen has been extremely generous to me, not in terms of his time, but also in terms of his work.
Not charging.
First, I saw him as a young student of painting at the Sir Jesus School of Art when I used to go to the galleries, and I would often see him with artist Tayyab Mehta. And sometimes on a Sunday morning, film society screening with another friend like Rasik Bhai Shah. And I gradually got to know him. And then much later, at one point, he told me that, I would like to, let's redo or design your studio. Now, my studio is in Ghatkopar then, and still I'm in Ghatkopar. I was born, brought up in Ghatkopar. So, in a chawl, as we say in Marathi, Baithi Chal. You know, it's tenements in a row, but no, not top floor in a chawl. So I said, Sen, we could do it. And uh, uh, I was, by the time I was little aware about Sen, his idea, his work. And I thought Sen is a minimalist. And I am a heavily, strongly figurative painter. And I don't think this will work out. Because I thought that, but then I thought that he likes John Cage. If he likes John Cage, that means he must be liking Robert Rauschenberg. And if he likes Robert Rauschenberg, then I'm sure he must be liking Jasper Johns. And if you like Jasper Johns, he has to like Atul Dodiya. It was as simple as that. Sen came and, it's like an old, that old Wadi. It was a 100 years old Lohana community chawl. And the structure is exactly like the way you see Sabarmati Ashram. Mangalore tile, the veranda, the iron bar, straight window kind of a thing. Then I told Sen, I said, Sukar, so how shall we do? First of all, let me tell you that Sen and myself, we always spoke in Gujarati. And that's important. Whether it is Manhattan, whether it's a Tokyo, whether it's Amalfi, whether it's a Sorrento or Ghatkopar. It's always our dialogue, our communication is in Gujarati, and I think that matters a lot. It really matters to me, and I think to Sen also. So but by the time, before designing my studio, there was one small corner space which we had for my wife Anju's studio, which he designed. And then in 2004, he designed my studio in the same chawl. Then I wanted to move to another apartment. Sen, again, as I said, he was so generous. He came to look at the spaces. Finally, we got the house. He designed the house. Then he designed Anju's another studio. Then he designed my new studio. So there are 5 spaces in Ghatkopar, which Sen designed. And I saw him, and what I noticed, why I am saying this, that because, I always thought, well, I am a visual artist, I am a painter, I could do photography, it's easy thing, but it's not easy. Photography is an extremely difficult medium. I realized immediately once I bought my camera. I thought architecture, interior, furniture, well, of course, I am a visual artist and I know the form, color, texture, everything, and it could be easy thing. Then I realized, no, it's not like that. But moving along with Sen, when he was doing things, the way he was talking, and what was happening in front of me, the spaces were getting transformed in such a way that, I realized that, oh, I never knew this poetry. And I think it's always a poetry which comes as a major abstract idea. And then I started seeing the things, the way the things were structured, the different time in a day. The light would move and the whole thing would get changed with artificial light or the natural light. All this thing, and I think then I realized that while talking, we were talking more about, he would never, he never explained. Say, like, I have a tendency of, explaining too much about my work and what I did and why I did, from where it came and all. He would say, he would look at it and he would do some drawings on the wall and, he would ask people to do it, and that's how they were done. And so I said, but you never told me that this is going to be like this. He said, no, I want to, let element of surprise. And the only thing when I heard him really talking was when Doshi Sahib, Balakrishna Doshi, architect, and Sen and myself, when we visited the NID building which he designed, where like whole day we were just kind of talking and sharing all kind of things, laughing, joking, and realized that there is much deeper concept or idea the man has, not just about his own medium or his profession, but about being human, the way you look at life. You see, when he did this Chawl studio, he knew, my neighbor, someone is working in a railway as an announcer, someone is a cashier in a municipality. And I said, Sen, but how will it gel? He said, you just see, it has to be different, one thing. Because some of my friends said after the studio was designed, they said, oh, but that old world charm was good and all that kind of a thing. But I said, no, I had enough of old world charm. I want to move, and I it doesn't matter. But then, it goes well, at the same time it comes out. And everyone, the neighbor, they all felt so happy about it. Of course, not that every time they would come in, but because there was a huge 8 feet by 8 feet window, so there was no almost wall outside the veranda, the spaces are different. So I think that's something very special. I thought, the common general people, the way they felt about the getting things transformed in form of, where you live. So I felt that, the way first time I became aware of the space, with him, that, oh, it's not just that, well, we are in a space, it's open space, till there, but my relationship, where I am, in which room, in which part, that I started thinking. And I am so happy that, when a team, British team had come to shoot a film on Charles Korea, and they wanted to interview Sen. Yeah. Yes. So and he, the person who was taking interview was none other than the well-renowned African British architect David Edge. Now, so Sen said, I would like to do the interview in Atul studio. So they said, where? He could have easily done in his office, which was also beautiful with a lovely skylight. But he came there, and they, did the whole interview there. I was there listening to them, and recently I met David Edge. He remembered. He asked me how is Sen. I said, Sen is not keeping so well, but he is absolutely spirited and sharp as always. So, and we laughed. But the
It's okay.
હું આપું Sen?
ના એને જાતે લેવું.
Anyway, so
Yes,
we can.
yeah. I mean, one of the central preoccupation of Sen is the idea of abstraction.
Yeah.
So everything that you're saying brings in the whole question of space becoming a place, and that is a very fascinating idea. We'll take this up little later, and some of the writings of Sen thinks about these matters well.
While Prabodh was mentioning minimalism, and you were talking about your conversation, I thought I'd like to share with you the bit of the conversation that happened between Doshi and Atul, Dodiya and Sen, and where they were talking about minimalism, they were talking about absence of color and what it means, the whole idea of the poetics of absences, poetics of minimality, and how he draws upon that minimality as a raw energy rather than superciliousness of excesses. So let me read that from the conversation itself. This is Sen. I love colors. I respected then, and I respected even now, Piet Mondrian's palette and the black, enriched yellow, olive green, red and blues, framed in the black and whites of Srinathji's Rajasthani miniature paintings. Gradually, they were suppressed, and black and white, they then regained their dominance. They are timelessly eternal. They are minimal because now we are not talking about colors. We have arrived at aesthetics in absence of color? Is it less is more or a moonless night? Or is it a return to Padamsee or Ellsworth Kelly or an exercise in Gandhian restraint for only the essential? So I thought this quote from his brings out what he feels in terms of both abstraction and minimality. Prabodh.
Yes, yeah, I think we can play with this idea and take it a little further when we get back to the whole question of, the enjoyable tension some of us have felt at various stages in our lives about what is it to inherit traditions, what is it to have those sanskars which, has become a part of our psyche, and what is it to have moved away from it, what is it to have experienced a sense of inheritance, as if we are, as Bob Dylan would say, why would I quote Bob Dylan, why not Raj Kapoor, but both equally, as to how does it feel to be on your own, like a rolling stone with no directions own. And that particular journey, that happens, and then you of course come back home, and Sen always comes back home, but he comes back home with what is the question we will continue to ask at another stage. But here is Kaiwan, as I said, the youngest among all of us. Kaiwan, so I'm going to provoke you. One of the favorite quotations that I have mastered is Marshal Duchamp. I'm little unhappy with Atul. He didn't mention Duchamp, who stands at the center of all this. And he says, art must resist being art. I think there is a sense of architecture must be resisted by an architect. Now, what does it imply? I think it implies something profound battle that is going on between yourself as to what you have inherited as an architect, student of architecture, and now what journeys you are making. In that very, very delightful sense, art must resist being art. And there is another quote which I can't help but quote, and then this is the home that Sen designed for us, and he designed it, and then I made this little collage where I quote John Cage. Some of us have the belief that one may own one's own home, but actually, unlike the snail, we carry our homes within us, which enables us to fly or to stay, to enjoy each. But, and that's the second point I'm trying to make to provoke all of us, but beware of that which is breathtakingly beautiful. Art must resist being art, and beware of the enchantment of what is beautiful. Where does art take you then? Is what we will ask Kaiwan. He also happens to be tiringly brilliant theoretician. So here we are, Kaiwan. I want to ask you something. In the essay, The Pursuance of Meaning, Sen seems to be actually addressing himself to the tomorrow of the practice of architecture. Those who must respond to the world as if they are all ahead of the game. This ahead of the game expression came up in 60s in relation to Jasper Johns and Rauschenberg and Duchamp and Buckminster Fuller. They were ahead of the game. Sen is perhaps ahead of the game, and in that sense he's an avant-garde and continues to be one even at this moment. But he's addressing to the future. You are the one who has been a student. Guru Bhakti not allowed. Then a writer and an editor. And you also have been writing extensively about what is it to be an individual as an architect. In other words, the historical subject that you are. They are culturally responsible to the emerging postmodern world. You have also been writing on Sen for 5 decades of practice, visions and life journeys of Sen. And to top it all, now you have ended up becoming a dean. He's beginning to look like one. How does it feel because when Doshi talks about the prabhav on him, he talks about Corbusier. Sen, doesn't talk very clearly about it, but he has a soft corner for Louis Kahn. He has worked with him. That's one small reason. What kind of prabhav Sen Kapadia carries for you as a student, as a practitioner of writer and editor, and now the pedagogy of being responsible to address tomorrow? Any?
Prabodh sir,
Yeah.
this is audible?
You also will need the
I will need-
mic.
Thank you.
The curator.
Are we doing all right?
No, we are not doing all right. I'm sitting here all this time.
Okay.
You got a question.
Yes. These are the,
Ask yes.
yes. Us.
Thanks for that very complex articulation, which I have to respond to. But this response is going to be sort of also swinging between the dance and the dancer, as you proposed at the beginning. And I think there will be a little bit of indulgence of some biographical notes which are important, because I think the journey that you sort of identified, being a student of architecture, trying to articulate your presence in the profession, not as somebody who sort of makes architecture in the classical sense, but sort of produces architecture through conversation and discourse, whether it's teaching, whether it's writing, whether it's criticism, whether it's curation, all these forms. And I think, let's say from 93, entering KRVIA as a student of architecture, and there is a moment that I articulate even to my students today. There was a class in basic design, and I didn't know what the hell I was facing and encountering. One just didn't know what one was facing as a student being talked about design. But the question was that one sort of allowed it to turn into a pursuit rather than sort of turn into any kind of a pessimist position towards questions of design, articulation of things like abstraction, or what you would say minimalism, or I think in the case of Sen Kapadia, what I've also tried to understand is that I feel more than minimalism, it is a certain form of essentialism, the sense of the essential, that in the way he articulates his work, there is a crispness, there is a terseness, and there is a vigorousness. And you wonder why that is happening. It happens, which is my reading with all humble submission, it happens because the pursuit is intellectual. I think this is what I've learned to articulate after all these years. I may have not been able, and this articulation very well can be challenged, that there cannot be practice which does not have an intellectual pursuit. And the intellectual pursuit is not an evening of entertainment or not an evening of feeling good, but it is a certain sense of that seeking of the truth, which is not the truth of the spiritual, which is not the truth of the client, but it is a certain kind of a philosophical pursuit. For us, Sen Kapadia, if I may say today in public, was a terror. I still narrate that if we even got a sense of him walking down the corridor to the class, we would be all in our seats. I think some of my classmates are here and we were sharing this just about 3 days ago. And it was obviously not very clear to us what he was hammering, and him with also building a larger team. I think also what is important to create the space for conversation. So whether you came, or whether Ranjit Hoskote came, or whether it was Vandana Ranjit Singh, Kiran Kapadia, Shraddha Sejpal, and a range of people that sort of passed by the corridors of KRVIA, one could only reflect on it when I started taking on positions when one was articulating spaces of conversation and discourse. So the space of education was the space of discourse. We may have not realized it, and we may have even felt that tension as students, but you articulate it in a sense much later. Either I'm sure my other classmates in their studios, consciously or unconsciously, me sometimes consciously because that's my job also. But I think I first hit a chord with the person Sen Kapadia is one, I was his student amongst another 200, 300, 400 students that must have passed by under him at Kamla Raheja. I think I just sent him an email when my book, Alice in Bhuleshwar, was launched. And I think I was touched and I was excited that when I went up on the stage and we were having a discussion like this on my book, he was sitting there. And I said, "Sir, you came all the way just for this book launch?" And he said, "You're my student. And this is an intellectual pursuit and I'm here." And next morning, obviously, he calls me up and we have a discussion, and I didn't know his Kalba Devi story, which I discovered much later as being somebody who was trying to put together a biography of works.
So there you are.
And as much as, and the struggle has been similar, that you are trained in a certain position of the minimal, the essential, but also the postmodern. So he did a course on semiotics with us where he discussed the Taj Mahal, and which was odd to sort of bring in at that point in time. But I'm a person who then went on to study ornamentation. And then he has an interest in Kotachiwadi, and one of his first documentations was a small publication on Kotachiwadi. So I'm like, what are you doing with Kotachiwadi, and what is this interest in Kalba Devi? And he talks about cycling fort as a teenager or a younger boy in his 20s, etc. And I think it was these kind of encounters that then slowly built up when I set up Arbor Research here, just down Stock Exchange. So the sense of the dynamics of economics and intellectual pursuit are never separate from each other.
That's a good one.
But otherwise, when we were at Domus and we started conversations for other things, there was a person that was sort of there to sort of tell you that you may be lost, but what you're doing is fine, and I respect it.
Yes.
And to get that from a teacher, although you may say no sort of guru bhav right now, but in a sense, that is something that touches you.
Right.
And I think in intellectual activity has a sense of the emotion. Not sentimentality, not the romantic, but it is emotional. So in my three attempts at, or three works of looking at the biographies of architectural works, three people at a very senior stage, one mid-career, it's very difficult, and the question always is there. Is there space between the dance and the dancer? Sometimes you allow them to collapse, sometimes you distance.
Well,
and
yes.
then you are there as the critic. Where do you come in between the dance and the dancer? Should you and should you not? I think it is these questions that every conversation in the last 5 or 7 years that I have had with Censor, these conversations never reached a resolution, but they reached a level of discourse. They reached a level of happiness. And I think that was the complaint very often that Asha ma'am had, कि तमे वात ज करिया करसो कि book पण लखसो.
Well,
I'll end this here.
Yeah.
Like there's much more to say, but I'll stop here.
No, Kaiwan, I was hoping for you to break down and have some tears here.
Well, I have to control because he won't like that.
I know. No. Sen is a terror. Oh, God, that sounds good. Apu, what do you say? The son is here, and he comes all the way from US, and Asha is here, Giv is here, and I tell you, all of you, your presence, and we are cheered up. I think there is some context about this various ways by which a dancer also emerges, the Nathadwara story. I mean, here we have a little dancer now, a non-terrorist.
Kaiwan, I completely understand you as a student of Sen and being terrified. Let me tell you, the last 1.5 years, a friend of Sen has been moments of not being terrified, because we have had too many dissensions and agreement in the last 30 years, so it's not been so bad, but it was a minefield. Every time I could say, this is sounding right, he turned to me and said, you're not being critical enough. You're not reading it enough. You're not paying attention. And when I could dare pick up my courage and with trepidation say, I don't quite agree, I had to make sure that I was as intellectually sharp for me to contend with what Sen had to say. And I think that has been a tremendous uh, energy which Sen has given to this book. This is what the book has come with. Every line, and every line drawn also by Asha, every line written down and conversed. And believe me, folks, if there are adjectives in this book, you owe it to me. If you find one, because he would fight tooth and nail to not allow me to do that. But so whatever there is all because of me. Okay, because I think he was just being indulgent at the end. Let me just read to you from a piece on Nathadwara. This is because I think we don't have the time to read what I would have loved reading about New York. As rightly pointed out by Pinkish, there has been 5 cities that Sen has mentioned. Mumbai, of course, Ahmedabad, New York, Nathadwara is one of them. And I would like to just read to you to show you that this avant-garde modernist has to talk about or reinvent the kind of historic legacy that is part of what defines him as an architect and an artist. So this is Nathadwara.
Are we doing all right with time?
Let me digress, because almost all the texts are about modern architecture. And he says, let me digress from the narrative of contemporary architecture with some modernist reflections on an intimate and personal religious place, Nathadwara, with the hope that interpreting traditions in this manner, we might open them up to larger continuums. The architectural image of this place is born out of a Vaishnav's belief that the avatar of Krishna dwells in a large house with wide-ranging religious and cultural activities. This embodiment is expressed not in any singular shrine, but in numerous courtyards, verandas, terraces, gardens, and frolicking fountains, a Haveli filled with multifarious activities representing an integration of aesthetics with the quotidian. So this need, his immersion into the past heritage is not a revival, but a reinvention of the past. And that, I think, is what marks again and again. I think Prabodh will.
Yeah, I mean, there is a very fascinating conversation between Atul, as you know, in this book. It's not, again, just 8 to 10 pages, and they are all very smart individuals, I mean, and they are talking in a very relaxed way, but there are some profound and significant differences each one has about their perception of what constitutes practicing whatever you are practicing, and in turn, what is your world view that emerges. So, of course, there are some differences, and the differences are wonderfully spelt out when they talk about Corbusier and Louis Kahn, but they also talk about tradition and past, and the bringing this in and keeping in mind the notion of avant-garde, the inevitable clash between what we have inherited, what I mentioned earlier, and what we want to move on to. It was in 1972, he wrote a letter to me. First of all, he would remind me that I owe him a book which I had borrowed from him, which I must return, so which I do. Then he says, look at these Japanese, you know, they are the most perfect. So that's another. We also know him as a terror, but like a Japanese terror, meaning you have to be wearing a blue today. How can you be so shabby? Why the places are not in order? Everything is too precise, and a chaos that I am and the order that he is, we are the best friends you can imagine. Okay. Now, the question of this tradition and modernity and postmodernity, all those terms become obsolete. one begins to look into the ways they talk about the notion of tradition. And here I thought it's a very good idea if Atul has, but Sen rightly is saying, Prabodh, when am I talking? Say something.
Madam, when one writes on a book like this, one addresses many intriguing.
Even his mic is not working. I'll hold the mic for you.
Where am I?
Ah,
Throw it.
hold it.
Thank you.
Yes.
The book is, this book is specifically, my pronunciation is going haywire. Because of my illness.
That's okay.
You'll have to tolerate.
No, we can.
I'll go on. You can't stop me. Defining their responsibilities
Let me hold this.
in future society.
I can hold this.
No, this is mine.
Okay.
Never give your possession. What will guide us? When we are looking for points to whether it's past or present or future, what will guide us? Your own viewpoints. They come from past experience. But I have a feeling that if we hang too much on past, future will never come. No, I won't give you.
I'm not giving.
No,
Just move it up.
you have to tolerate what I am.
That's nice. I like that.
I tell
नहीं
you,
वो नहीं वो अपना वो छोटा वाला माइक
लेपल माइक ऊपर ले लीजिए
क्या नाटक लगा है
Ah, very serious.
देखो भी सुनाई देता है आपको,
Yes, we can all
पर
hear.
समझेंगे नहीं, सुनेंगे बस समझेंगे। देखो, चलो करो करो। In this long searching journey, all the substance of this book. A lot of people ask me, what do you write on? I write on speculation. You say this and this has happened. What else could have happened? That's our job. That's the future architect. I don't want to be an architect who is practicing. I'm not practicing, I'm perfecting. So you have to go to the next direction. What is it that you are looking for? I am looking for a congenial atmosphere where we can images of our existence in this long searching journey. Thank you. New generation of what will guide us. What are our questions? Sometimes our questions are themselves difficult. You have to invent questions if you are really going to be interpreting. Architecture is a multifaceted art, and it beckons us to unique creative journey. Images of trust, our regression in this long searching journey. All the substance of this book, I'm repeating it. Here, was in search of an innocent self, hoping that it would lead us further to even more. This is for our conversation. It has placed many times. Even more innocent, open to unfolding plenitude of new experience. How is it new experience? Everybody doesn't get new experience by being here. I get, you get, sometimes we all get.
Yes, well said.
Here we were in search of innocent self, hoping that it would lead us further to even more innocent self, open to unfolding plenitude. Hey, shut up. Let us continue in the dialogue with future. Laughing Apu has come from America. How can you dialogue with future? It's not a sentence. But that's what I mean. You have to invent the sentence.
Yes.
You have to invent the reverse meaning and then search for it. I know it's difficult. What is easy in life? Nothing. To end this small dialogue, let us continue to dialogue with future rebels. Who are future rebels? You are my future rebel.
You are my
Some time
future
ago.
rebel.
But you gave up that being rebel. You found answers. Don't find answers.
Yeah.
If you find answers, you cannot be rebel. You cannot be looking. You are like all of us, well dressed, comfortably in their shoes, some in Bata shoes or some in Crocs or whatever. But they define it. Don't define it. That is my request to you. Reference and partial understanding of complex overlapping realities I keep suspense. I learned that from Italian writer. He writes, he reads something, and then he changes his graphic. So after the lecture, I asked him, Leo Leone made a fish, then called fish. I said, why do you do that? He said, this is to increase the effect. It has nothing to do with the story. So here is the real meaning of searching for story. It may have no meaning at that point, but it is loaded to find out in the future. I live in that future. John Cage lives in that future. I hope all of you can come to live in the future.
Yes.
Thank you for listening. If you want Talia, repeat a sentence.
So,
Yeah.
no, I think it requires tremendous courage to introduce the word innocence into any discourse, any conversations. Sen this evening dared the courage to be, the courage to speak, bring in the notion of innocence in the performance that we do, not the person that you are. That's little, little more ambitious, as Eliot would say, is what the saints do. We are human, we don't do that. But to tell us about this notion of innocence, and then he ends up saying that I live in that future, and he he scolds him. Don't get trapped into where you are with the answers. And then he tells all of us, unless you live in the future, there is nothing to gain, nothing to perform. The journeys are done. Sen's journey is on. And he forces us to have our journey on, which is such a delightful 60 years of friendship. You should see Sen and Tayyab, which I was lucky to see 3 times a week for last 40, 50 years. Mitra was always there. We met almost every day. But when Sen went to Tayyab, Tayyab used to ignore me. It still hurts. So that's life. That's Sen Kapadia.
All this is life.
Life.
May I say something?
Yes, please.
No, I just want to say that, you guys made him, like a terror and strict. But every artist has a very strong likes and dislikes. Whether to Chana was saying, there could be a war about that. So that's okay. But otherwise also, we all have a very strong this thing. But, you simply cannot ignore sense of humor.
Oh, we're going to get there.
That is something, which you really can't. And, like we have to do a full-fledged one session on that.
Yes. Sen has written about it, Mitra.
Really?
Can you find that? Yeah. So, of course, Sen's humor. Sharp.
To sense of humor in cinema.
Yes.
Our Indian cinema ignores sense of humor. I written here an article in which I am saying the sense of humor can be also introduced in our cinema. But we take it too seriously. I'll read next time.
Yes. She's going to read a little about sense of humor.
About the NID, the art.
Yes.
Actually,
Just few
His
lines.
defiance of the symmetry, his continuous desire to break convention. And this is what he's designed NID, and he talks about wiggly walls. And he's talking about the non-linear arches in that side demonstrate our will to modify standard architectural rules. These arches are non-religious, non-demolitional, and non-load bearing, thus displaying non-practicality as our tool with gentle humor. When you look at it, you will see each of these arches have gone every which way. And this is how he continues to practice in terms of his writing. Sen, can I just beg make a request? Can I just read those lines you talked about innocence? Because I think some friends over there could not hear. So I'll just repeat what you had read in order to reach out to those friends there. So let me just quickly give you what Sen had to say about it. It's in his introduction, and you will be able to read it. But let me do this. Architecture is a multifaceted art, and it beckons us to a unique creative journey. Images of our exertions in this long searching journey are the substance of this book. Here, we voyaged in search of an innocent self, hoping that would lead us further to an even more innocent self, open to the unfolding plenitude of new experiences. Untouched by the legacies of the chaotic aesthetic practices surrounding us, we create from the imperturbable inner resources within us. These we configure as the elemental sun, wind, colors of our cultures, contours of our land, and the intellectual rigor generated by such elements and contexts. That's what you were talking about.
Yeah. Thank you.
the intellectual substance is difficult to evaluate. At the most he will say, "Sadhu છે."
Well, I think we can continue, which we always do when we are with Sen. we can continue as he wishes that we do it with ourselves. I think we could easily reflect little more on this idea of to be beware of which is breathtakingly beautiful. What can Cage mean by that, and how does Sen take it and internalize it? But you know, one thing that you notice when you go through this barely 15 pages of writing, that Sen talks about dropping the self. You know, that's a classic Japanese Zen story where, you know, you drop it like that. And Sen says, my journey is about dropping the self. And that's why I talked about dancer and the dance. Of course, such a fighter, and a fighter along with another fighter in presence of us, Asha. Now, when I say fighters, Mike is okay. When I say fighters, I mean real fighters. Every second day they would fight. Full fight.
You should be wounded.
Meaning, what human touch most of us have got from Sen and Asha. And no Guru Bhakti, no religiosity, no spirituality, just a human conversation. Right? Okay. Okay, yeah, fine. I think, Pinkish, we can.
Thank you to all of you. After that really fascinating conversation with so much of food for thought, back to the mundane a little bit. Before we wrap up the event, we request just a few more minutes of your time for some announcements and some thanks that are due. The book can be purchased today at a specially discounted rate of 1,000 rupees, which is a 23% discount on the list price of 1,300 rupees. The book will also go on sale on the CEPT website and on Amazon soon, and we will share those details once live on our social media feeds, which are kind of mentioned there, and also kind of listed, on our Instagram, Facebook handles. So do look out for those. Sen has agreed to sign a few copies of the book, so don't miss your chance to do that. And we do have some refreshments while you wait and before you leave. We would love to have your feedback after you've had the chance to go through the book. So please do drop us a line on our social media feeds or on senkapadiabook@gmail.com. If you wish to have any comments on the event, there is a kind of book outside. We would welcome you to do that, please. A quick vote of thanks. Sorry.
Before he says vote of thanks, this book would not have happened but for Pinkish. Absolutely. It wouldn't have happened. With a sloppy me and with an angry Mitra and Asha and with Sen being tricky, the book would have waited for another 25 years. But this young man is my next consultant.
The making of a building, like many of the architects gathered here know, is not a solo act, but the effort of multiple hands and minds. The making of this book and the event today has been no different, and gratitude is due to several along the way. In case I miss anyone, my sincere apologies, but you know who you are and you are very well appreciated. I'm just going to run through a lot of these. Firstly, a very big thanks to all of you for being such a wonderful audience, patient, and for taking the time and trouble to come on a weekday evening in spite of all the traffic snafus today. Several of you have come from across town. Some have taken the trouble to make it from other cities, Ahmedabad, Pune, Nashik, Thane. So we sincerely thank you and appreciate for being with us today. It means a lot. Thank you, Prabodh Bhai, for moderating this session, and thanks to Atul, Mitra, Kaiwan for the scintillating conversation. Mr. Bhavdat Patel and the staff at the CSMVS Museum, Parag Kulkarni and his team at Jaina Events and Promotions, Arzan Sabawala and Kayosh Kerawala and their team of the Ratan Tata Institute for the catering, Abir Khan and her team for documenting the event today, Vincent Francis and his exacting and diligent team at Jack Printers A lot of these people are with us today. A very, very big thank you to CEPT University, Kartikeya Shodhan especially for coming down and being with us, Namrata Shah, Dr. Tridip Surud and Dr. Bimal Patel for their unwavering support throughout the book. Rasika Nayak of Studio Advaitya Pune for building the foundations of the book. Deshna Mehta and Tirtha Gandhi of Studio Anugraha, the designers of the book, for the excellent job done in the very, very limited time they were given. My better half, Shilpa, for supporting me and giving me the space to do this over the last 18 months. Our fantastic team at S+PS Architects who have been consumed with this over the last few weeks. Thank you Naresh, Chetan, Tejas, Dheeraj, Prerak and Aboli, who has been managing the social media content that we hope you've been enjoying. We are really missing two of our core team today. Shushti Shah, who is hopefully watching us from UC Berkeley. Hi Shushti. And our very own Barish Date of Graphics Beyond, for whom Sen ke liye kuch bhi karega was a mantra he demonstrated throughout the project. Parth Kumaste from his team and Priyanka Date, his partner, are here in his absence. Asha Ben, the rock and pillar through thick and thin, without whom this book would not have seen the light of day. And finally Sen, for scaring me with the immense trust he has placed in me. They say one can always find a teacher, but a guru has to find and accept you. Thank you Sen for finding and accepting me. Sen Kapadia everyone.